Hey guys, I'm McKenna, and I'm so excited to welcome you back to the Dream Life Diaries podcast. But if you're new here, this is the show that's all about mindset, motivation, goal setting, and all action steps towards making that dream life that you desire into your current reality. Here we talk about everything from mindset work to actual manifestation practices to journaling, goal setting, mindset shifts, affirmations, action steps, all those small things that add up into making your dreams come true. And I'm so excited to dive into today's episode because today I am talking about a topic that is so important to making that dream life that you desire come to you now. We're going to talk about how there's never a perfect time to dive into some of the goals that you want to achieve or some of the things that you want to learn, some of the things that you want to do in life. We're going to talk about all this and why it's so important to just start acting on it. Just start taking action and see where it leads you. We're going to dive into some action steps and why you should chase your dreams now. Not tomorrow, not next month, not when everything feels perfect, but right now. And this is your permission slip to stop waiting and start doing. If you clicked on this episode, chances are that there's already something that you know you're waiting to do or to start or to dive more into, but you're being a little bit hesitant about doing so. So if this sounds like you're in the right place. So if you guys are ready to start taking actions on your dreams and stop waiting, then let's dive into it. When it comes to talking about chasing our goals or dreams or just new things in life in general, whether it's a new hobby, a new passion. I think there's this myth around there being a perfect time. And so many of us out there, we have these goals and dreams and passion projects that we want to work on, but we always push them off until later or until we have the money, until it's the right time, until we have the right skill set, etc. It's so easy to fall into this and to fall in this trap of waiting for someday that perfect moment when the stars align that's never going to come to you. I feel like we all spend so much time waiting for the day when we get that money to go on that trip or for getting the skill set perfected before we dive into a new project. But the perfect time doesn't exist. It doesn't exist and it's never going to exist. It's just not going to. And I think we have to understand that the universe doesn't wait for you. No matter what it is, if you're waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect person, the perfect skill set. If you're trying to learn something new and you're waiting till you perfect your skills to actually go out there and present it to the world and actually dive into it, the universe is not going to wait for you. Time is not going to slow down. And I think now, as I'm getting to my 20s, I'm starting to see just how fast time moves. I think there's so many things that I want to create in my own life, and I'm just seeing time does not wait. If there's something that you want to do, it's so important that you take action on it as soon as you can, as soon as you feel the passion for something, because time flies by. Let me tell you, especially this year in 2025, so far the months have been literally flying by so quickly. It's insane, actually. I blinked and now it's mid-April. And I think we could easily fall into the mindset of wishing the months by, waiting for something bigger to come into our lives and everything, or just waiting once again for that perfect moment. But the universe doesn't wait. So this is why you need to take advantage of the time that you have and the time that you have to make your goals become your reality because the universe isn't going to wait for you, and neither is anybody else in this world. I think a lack of action can fall into our lives in so many ways. It could be wanting to travel more, wanting to change your career, wanting to learn a new career skill. If you want to start a podcast, if you want to become a social media influencer or get into content creation, if you want to change your career path, or if you want to start dating, get in relationships, if you want to put yourself out there, join clubs, join a running club, all these things, you can't wait until you perfect something to dive into it. And I think a lot of times when we are not taking action on these things, when we're putting the things that we want to do on a pause, it's really a sign that fear is within us. And whether we know it or not, it could be really upfront. We could acknowledge that we have so much fear around something, but a lot of times it could be in disguise as well. When we talk about lack of action, it can a lot of times boil down to the fear of failure, fear of the work that something is going to take, fear of change. Many times, the things that we want to do take a lot of effort or take a lot of change. I just think a lot of people who are, if you're not happy with your life right now, and you want to move to a different place, a different city or something, or change your career, that's a lot of change. And that's a lot of effort. It's not easy to do those big changes. It's not easy to move, to pick up your life and go, pick up your life and travel. It's not easy to do these things. And I think a lot of times we're fearful, not just of the result itself, not just leaving your past behind for something new, but of the effort it's going to take. And I think it's a subconscious thing in our minds a lot of time, the subconscious effort that's going to take to get to where we want to be. Even when it comes to things like dating, I think we can all acknowledge that dating takes a lot of work. You could sit around and say, yeah, I want to be with my dream partner. I want to be in my dream relationship. But you're going to have to go through a lot of work to get there. You're not just going to stumble across somebody, you know, walking down the street and then everything's just going to be like, okay, here you go. Here's a boyfriend or something. Like, that's not how the world works. And there's so much that goes into that. I think that's why a lot of us subconsciously block out relationships and, you know, block ourselves from meeting the right partner is because we know that you're going to probably have to go on quite a few dates. You're going to have to look your best, have those conversations with them, go through those dates and have to be like on you have to be on. I mean, if you're going on a date with somebody, you have to be, spot on. You can't just be out of it. You have to probably date quite a few people to learn what you like and what you don't like. And a big thing is you're going to have to make changes to yourself. You're going to have to up level yourself and have a lot of like self-confidence and do a lot of inner work to get yourself to the point where you're confident enough in yourself to be able to be with another person. You're gonna have to give up a lot of your time too when you're going into the dating world. You have to give up, a lot of your evenings, a lot of your days, a lot of your personal time that you would normally have for you and yourself, for your friends. So it's a big change going to that world and it's a lot to navigate. So it's one example of one of the things I feel like we subconsciously block out of is not like we're just afraid of having a boyfriend, having a relationship or something. We're afraid of the work it's going to take, the change it's going to take, the change to our schedule, the change to our day-to-day life. I think when you're going to a relationship or something like that, your life is going to change. And also, when we're trying to dive into new things in life, no matter what it is, a skill, relationships, career growth, a move, anything, these things usually push us out of our comfort zone, which is scary. And it's so scary to go through these changes and to get out of our comfort zone, but it's also so important in order to see the growth that we need to achieve the end result that we're aiming for. And the biggest thing is you're never going to be 100% ready to dive into anything, honestly. And I think that's why it's so important. If there is something that you want to do out there, no matter what it is, you need to start taking action on it and start working on it before you're ready. I think this is so important, and I've been seeing more and more how important this really is now as I'm getting into the social media space and into the content creation space, podcasting and everything. I put off starting a podcast for years, literally years. I wanted to start one back in college, and I've always been wanting to start a blog, podcast, social media accounts, and I never did it because A, I was too scared. There was that fear. I was also scared of the time that it would take, the change. But then I just kept waiting. I kept waiting for the stars to align and for me to have a wide open opportunity to dive into this space. Even when I started getting really serious about it, it took me, I think, about 6 months before I actually just said, screw it, I'm just going to do it and start posting stuff. I kept trying to put aside time. I kept writing it on my to-do list every single day. I was look into podcasting, take a course on how to do this. And you want to know what? I kept writing that on my to-do list for months, months. And I probably spent 2, 3 hours actually trying to dive into it and learn it. So I kept putting it off. And, you keep putting it off, but it doesn't get out of your head. It's one of those things where it's like you just need to dive into it head first. Podcasting is one of those things, especially that you need to dive into it head first. And I don't have any technology background. I'm honestly probably one of the least tech savvy people out there. But that's where this comes into play. I could have just kept waiting months down the line, and I could have just kept saying, okay, in a few months, I'll have the skills needed. I'll have the talk tracks built out. I will have the softwares downloaded on my computer, and I'll perfect my knowledge in them to be able to get into podcasting. I record on Riverside, so I can be like, I could become a Riverside master before I dive in. I could build out 10 different podcast scripts on my computer and have them stored there so I'm ready to go. I could build up my social media account to create hype before I even launch this and maybe wait till I get 1,000 followers or so before I even launch it. Those are the kind of things that were in the back of my head and I could have just kept doing that. I could have waited until I had the money to buy the most perfect equipment out there, to have the best audio and the best visuals out there. But I got to the point where I had to rip off that band-aid. And you guys do too. You can't just wait forever to be able to dive into things. That's why my motto, honestly, has always been just dive in head first. I think I said that when I was moving here as well. I just said, screw it, I'm just going to dive in. And I mean, that I prepared for a long time. But it's just one of those things like you figure it out as you go along. You do. And I'm seeing that more and more as I'm getting to the social media space. I'm now apprenticing with social media managers because I would really love to get more in that space. I love working with social media and accounts and everything. So I am trying to learn more about that. And I could definitely say, hey, let me get the knowledge on my own before I work with you, before I sign myself up to work with you. And I am really lucky because I don't have any official social media management experience per se, besides running my own accounts. But this is another thing too. You don't need to play down your knowledge of something. Sometimes we really kind of hype up the knowledge that others around us have about certain topics and certain things that we want to get into. I think being in the podcast space now, I would idolize so much some of these podcasters that I listen to and say, oh, I need to be on their level in order to say I know what I'm doing on here. Same thing for bloggers and especially for content creation. I mean, I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. I literally don't, but I just figured it out as I went along. One day, I just sat down and said, today is the day that I'm going to record my podcast and I'm just going to figure it out. And that's where I started. This was back in January. So now I'm on month 4 of actually recording and putting stuff up here. And was it easy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Especially for me, I'm a perfectionist. So it was so hard for me to dive into space and try and record and edit stuff that wasn't perfect off the bat. But I got sick of waiting. So one day I just sat down, recorded, it was so tough because I was not used to being on camera. I hated being on camera. I hated listening to my own voice. Oh, don't even get me started with that. I still hate listening to my own voice so much. And the amount of times that I stumbled, got off track, I could barely keep my thoughts straight. I didn't even know what I was saying. I was just blabbering. I probably blabbered for like 2 hours. I will never forget that first episode. It literally took me 8+ hours to edit because it was so all over the place and so choppy. And it was my first time using the software. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to click for certain things, what to dive into. I didn't even know what the system did. I watched the videos, but honestly, I have a bad memory. So, like, I didn't remember a lot of the things that I learned from the videos when I was diving into it. And now, 4 months later, am I a pro at podcasting and podcast editing? No, absolutely not. I have so much work to go, but I had to start somewhere. I couldn't just become a master in a skill before I dove into it and started actually working in it. And I know this is so hard to say. Once again, this is coming from a perfectionist myself. It's so hard if you're a perfectionist to have this mentality to just dive into things and kind of see what happens, learn as you go along. But you need to get over that perfectionist aspect a little bit. You have to throw your content out there before, it's super polished and ready. Let's say you want to get into a running club. You need to start just going and showing up and just running with everybody before you're a marathon runner. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care if you're not running half marathons at a 7-minute pace right off the bat. Just you have to go. You have to learn as you go along. If you want to move to a new place, this is something I'm always talking about. You just need to launch yourself into it. Like, don't be super irrational and set yourself up for failure by getting like a super expensive apartment without a job. Don't do that, please. But I also really think that you figure things out when you have to. And I think that's something that's so huge to remember is once again, not setting yourself up for failure, but when you have to figure things out in life, these are the times you actually dive into it and put in the effort to figure it out. A lot of this boils down to procrastination. The majority of the time, unless you're someone who's super, super motivated and ahead of the game, you're not going to do your homework if it's an assignment due at the end of the semester during the first week of classes. You're probably not going to do it until you actually have to do it. For many of us out there, we won't start eating healthy until we have to, until maybe our doctor tells us we have to. We'll say we want to make more money and then not make any changes until we get to a point where we literally need to start making more money to be able to get by. We're not going to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone unless there's a real reason to. So, this is why you need to give yourself a reason. Give yourself that push to have to do something, to have to learn it and have to dive into it. So, this is why we need to focus on progress over perfection. And remember that any form of progress is progress, okay? Even if it's small increments at a time. You're not going to get perfection by just doing something for a small bit of time and learning as you go along. You're not going to become a perfectionist overnight. That's why we need to focus on the progress rather than the perfection as a result. And I think we just need to gather a greater appreciation for the progress that we do see. I could look back at my time podcasting and say, those first episodes sucked. And I mean, they did. They were not good. And I knew that at the time too. I knew they sucked, but I still posted them anyway because I needed something to force me out there. I could have just kept re-recording them over and over again. And I think I did that at least literally like 4 times. I think I re-recorded the same intro episode trying to make it better. And I could have just kept re-recording that over and over until it was at a perfect spot and I could post it out there and be super confident about it. But once again, I got to that point where I realized that that day was never going to come. I was never going to be able to record a perfect version of that first episode, edit it perfectly, and uploaded it to look absolutely perfect. I just knew it wasn't going to happen. So that's why I just ripped off the Band-Aid and I said, you know what? I don't care. If people judge, let them. Literally let them. Mel Robbins, let them. Literally, let them judge if they want to. But I'm really proud of myself for the progress that I made to just get started. And no matter what it is that you're doing, just getting started is such a huge step. And we need to celebrate that. We need to celebrate these little wins, the little progress as you go along. And I love using running as a metaphor because I'm a runner myself. I come from a family of crazy, like super intense marathon runners. And you need to celebrate the little increments. If you're getting your pace from a 9-minute mile down to an 8:30 mile, down to an 8-minute mile, or if you're going for distance, let's say you start out running, like chances are you're going to make it like a mile, probably, maybe not even. And then over time, you could watch that grow. And then one day, you're able to run 2 miles and then three. And the next thing you know, you're running a 10K and then you're working up towards your half marathon. You can't just get out of bed one day after being super lazy and never going to the gym, never working out, and then go run a half marathon. I mean, people, I guess, have probably done it before, but you get what I'm saying. It's not going to be easy. So we have to focus on celebrating those little wins. Celebrate going that extra mile, that extra step. Celebrate the progress you get if you're trying to learn something new. If you're trying to learn a new skill, especially online nowadays, it's so easy to do these digital classes and everything. Take one of those and celebrate each chapter that you get through on that class. Celebrate each lesson, each step that you learn, every little moment of progress. Make sure to acknowledge that and celebrate it. Celebrate all the learning that you do along the way. And once again, coming from a perfectionist, this is kind of hard to say, but it's so true, is that there is an unappreciated value in messy beginnings. And hear me out on this. So I think sometimes when we just launch ourselves into things, when we just throw ourselves out into the wild and say, we're just going to figure it out, I think there is so much to be appreciated into that. Things might be chaotic at first. And, like I said, chances are you're not going to be able to just try and do something new and just land perfect on the first time. No, and I think we need to kind of embrace that messy beginning, embrace the chaos a little bit and see what filters out of it. See what you can learn from it. And no matter what it is, what you're learning, what you're doing, there is so much to be appreciated into the learning that goes into it. You are always going to come out of something with something learned. So remember that. Remember that there's always something to be learned and always progress to be made from that. Encourage yourself to take imperfect action, to just launch yourself into it. Maybe go take that pottery class or that yoga class with a friend if you've never tried it before. Try going on a run with somebody else if you've never even gotten into running. Use that as motivation. Something that I love to always say is to motivate yourself by others who already know how to do the thing that you want to do. You need to put yourself around the people that are already doing what you are visualizing, doing what you want to do to motivate yourself to meet them at that level and, improve your own skills in it to get motivation to get to that point. And I heard another podcaster say recently, this phrase that I love is that water always raises to the level it's at. Or I feel like I said that wrong, but like water meets the level it's at. Yeah. So just think if you're pouring water into another container of water, it's going to rise to meet it at the same level. And I think this is how it works in the world is if you want to dive into something, I'll use content creation as an example again because I've seen this myself, is you need to start surrounding yourself with people that are in that content creating space. You need to just dive into it and surround yourself with these people who are successful influencers, who are successful social media managers and content creators, because they're going to be the ones that filter out those ideas that you can pick up yourself to meet them where they're at. You could, of course, start on your own and work your way up and try and meet them there. But the best way to do it is just dive in and just try and meet them at that level that they're at. To get there, you can follow the people that are already doing the work that you want to create. Mimic their steps and what they're doing because if it worked for them, chances are it could work for you as well. I love talking about this concept as well when it comes to the idea of moving to a new city. And if you want to, up level and grow and become, a different person, be more entrepreneurial, really work on your wealth and mindset and business, then you need to go to a big city. Being in a big city changes so much. You're surrounded by some of the most successful people in the world. So if you want to become successful, you need to just put yourself into that pool of people. Being surrounded by those other individuals will help you have not only the motivation, but to meet the different people, to learn those skills, have more opportunities to achieve that success that you want. They're going to share ideas and experience with you that you could absorb yourself to meet them where they're at. When you just start and you just dive into things before trying to perfect it, before things are already experienced or already perfect, this is how you gain so much momentum. Just by starting, you put yourself on this track of momentum that's going to take you so far. I think a lot of times it almost blocks what we want our end goal to be if we put too much emphasis on perfecting our skills and whatever it is that we're trying to do before even starting. Just think about it. If you put so much time into the prep period, you might get burnt out by the time that you actually dive into the race. Think about it if you're on a sports team. Let's say you're on a soccer team and your coach made you do 3 hours of warm-up drills right before your biggest game. By the time you get through the first quarter of the real game, you're probably going to be so burnt out because you spent so much time warming up. You spent 3 hours warming up, doing drills, that by the time you actually get into the game, you're probably going to be exhausted. And this is so true. If you spend so many months trying to dive into a new skill and learn it before putting yourself out there or trying to, prep yourself for a change in life, by the time that you actually get to that point to put it into practice, you might be burnt out from it already. So that's something to consider as well is just take it one day at a time. Learn those skills as you go along. And honestly, this really makes it more fun too, because you get to pick up those pieces as you go, pick up those breadcrumbs and follow that. And I think this makes the whole experience so exciting. It's because you see how much you learn as you go along. This also gives you a great way to look back on your progress that you've made. This is one of my favorite things to do is a little progress reflection. It's so great to be able to look back on what I've created for myself, on what I've learned, and to see how far I've come. And I think this is something that you should channel as well if you're trying to take action with something new is, give yourself credit for what you've done. Take time to look back and see where you started. And even if you're a few weeks in, a month in, or even down the line to a year, there's always points to look back at how far you have come. And that needs to be celebrated. So use your starting point, no matter where it is, as that momentum. Use it as the momentum to keep the ball rolling, to move forward with clarity and confidence that you'll get to that end goal eventually. It's not going anywhere. You just need to learn as you go. And I promise you that once you start and you actually put yourself out there in the field, ready to go, doors are going to start opening for you. Doors open once you begin, and they're not going to just start opening before you even dive into the space. If you have this energy still, it's like, I need to perfect what it is I want to do. I need to stay back here and perfect this before moving forward, before going out into the field to put what you've learned into practice. This blocks so many opportunities from coming in. Opportunities are going to show up for you when you're in motion. Once again, this is kind of the idea of the water rises to meet the water where it's at. Opportunities are going to open up for you when you're in that period of being in motion. Opportunities aren't going to come rushing in when you're rigid in this point of stagnation and just trying to perfect what it is. Opportunities are going to meet you where you're at when you're in motion, when you're moving forward. Another story I love to reference on this topic is my sister Melissa. So she has owned a successful zucchini bread business for a few years now. It's called the Blue Root, and shameless plug, we did a interview a few weeks back on the show. So if you're interested in hearing more about her business and how she built that and pivoted with change and everything, make sure to go ahead and give that episode a listen. But she is a prime example of just diving in head first and figuring things out as she went along. The business kind of landed in her lap in a way. So she was doing some brunches at the time, but she started out by making a lot of these gift boxes in Charleston, where we both live. She would, do these delivery boxes for people who'd come into town or have a new baby or, have like a bridal gift to send out, a company gift, etc. So she would make these cute little collective boxes. And so that's kind of where she started. And then she started getting more into the brunch on the food side again, because she's always, she went to culinary school, has always been into cooking. So she started catering brunches. And eventually she ended up doing this one for this one blogger. And she decided last minute to bring one of her zucchini breads, which was my grandmother's old recipe. They're so delicious. So anyway, she brought zucchini bread to this brunch for this blogger, and the blogger posted it, and it went like viral. And my sister got so many thousands and thousands of followers overnight. I kid you not. So immediately she was kind of launched into this place where she ended up starting her business. I think this is such a great example of she could have waited. She could have waited until a time when she had her baking process totally locked down, her shipment process. I mean, just think, she started shipping these breads all over the country, which was definitely something that was not easy to do. She could have waited until she had the perfect cooking space, until she had the perfect team to work alongside her and build the business with her and, support her in building and shipping out so many breads in such a large quantity of product. She could have waited, but she didn't. She didn't wait. She just dove right in and started one day selling the breads online. And once again, it just took off. And her husband just got to the point where they just figured it out as they went along and they had to just keep adapting. They had to be fluid and adaptable because things just happened so quickly. But they didn't put a pause in the momentum. They didn't sit down and say, look, we need to pause this. We need to restart, revamp and everything, wait till we're perfect and then launch back into it. They just kept rolling with it time and time again. And there were so many moments over the years when there were blockages that came in and they tried to make a pivot or a change and things just weren't happening the way they should be. But they never quit. They never stopped. And they really just kept rolling with it and rolling with the momentum. And I just always think back to that story and how she, grew her business to be so successful. And I'll always applaud her for that and the effort she took to make that a reality and to not be fearful of it, to really just roll with it and figure it out as she went along. And then, now she's here down the line. And I think when she started, if she were to think about where she has gotten to her business over time, the way it's grown, if she were to try and match that energy when she first started out, things wouldn't have worked. She couldn't just see that end goal and try and, change all of her processes at the time to be perfect and be perfected. It had to happen over time. It took so much time for learning and adapting and building and that slow burn growth. And that's what she needed. And I think this is just such a great example of being able to adapt in life and dive in head first and see where things land. A lot of times as well, when we have something we're passionate about or want to dive into, a goal we want to achieve or chase after, we self-sabotage in so many different ways. One of the worst things that we can do is tiptoe around our ideas for so long. And I think I'm seeing this now looking back as well in the content creation space. I feel like I tiptoed around it for so many years when I really wanted to dive in and I was too afraid to. I was too afraid to put my content out there and start really working in that space. And I just kept dancing around the idea. I would try and do more creative, fun stuff with my own accounts when even other people around me weren't. And that was like me tiptoeing around it. I would make so many different accounts all the time to try and post the things I really wanted to, and then I would never dive fully in. I would always be half in and half out. And I think now it's where I'm at is I'm now apprenticing with these social media managers. I'm talking about this and like I've always wanted to get into this space, but I've always been only half in. I never really just dove into it. I always thought there was so many more skills to learn before I would be qualified to even be in the space. And now I'm seeing just how false that is. And looking back, I'm never one to really have many regrets. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I regret my choices and everything, because that's not true. But looking back, I do kind of regret not diving into it sooner, just because if I were to dive into it sooner, just think about how much growth I could have had by now. A few years down the line, I could have learned so much. Whereas now, I feel like I'm just still just getting into the space. But if there's something that you want to do and you're ready to dive into it, you can't be half in and half out. And that's a huge thing as well, is being half in is honestly harder than going all in. A lot of times when we're half into something, half out, we're in that point where, maybe we really want to do something. And I think that's usually when we're in this is there's something we're really passionate about and actually really want to do, and we're just scared to let the world see it. It's when we're in that mindset of, oh, we really want to do this, but we're not going to tell anybody about it. We're going to kind of keep it secret. Maybe you want to become an influencer or a content creator, and you're making all these like ghost accounts that are not connected to your name or anything because you don't want people to see it. Maybe you want to become a writer. Maybe you're just posting your stories on Wattpad so people don't really see it. I think this is that half in, half out energy. If you're not willing to let other people see the work that you're doing, the progress that you're putting in and everything, if you're not willing to let people see your progress, the work that you're putting in and the things you're passionate about, you're half in, half out. If you're hiding it from others, then you're not fully dedicated to it. And I think this makes it harder for yourself because I think when we have these big goals, I think we do have such a spiritual, deep connection to them. There is a reason we're so passionate about them. There's a reason that we want to do something so badly. So I think it's honestly so hurtful to ourselves to have that mentality around it where we feel the need to hide it from other people. So this is your encouragement. If you've ever felt that way, like you're hiding your passions from others, or in that half in, half out mentality where you're just kind of like, oh, maybe I'll look into it, maybe I'll check it out. This is your sign to dive right in. It's encouragement to follow your gut. If your gut is leading you to try something new, to dive into something, test it out and don't be afraid to let others know about it. Let's say it does flop, and maybe a few weeks, a few months down the line, you say, maybe that wasn't for me anyway. Nobody's gonna judge you for that. Nobody's gonna be like, oh, there he goes again, just trying something out, and oh, weren't you doing this last week? Now you're quitting on it. If they do say that, honestly, screw them. But I feel like people just are not gonna think that. And a lot of times, most people are really impressed that you're going out and doing different things. Think about how many people just kind of live the same life on repeat every single day and never try anything new. That's why I think a lot of times, actually, we're so afraid for other people to see us trying out new things. But in reality, a lot of times people praise us. Just think about your friends or your family and think about how you feel when they go out and do something new and start learning a new skill, a new hobby, dive into something new, career, anything. You're probably so excited for them. So remember that. Remember how you feel when those around you are doing something they're passionate about and sharing it with you. You could probably sense the passion that they have about something too when they're talking about it and when they're really into it. So don't be afraid to try this out for yourself and don't be afraid to let people know about the things that you're doing, the things that you're passionate about, and the new things that you're getting into. So, how do we get from this point of being a dreamer, of wanting to dive into something and becoming a doer? So, while I do think embracing the chaotic starts and just diving into things are so important, that doesn't mean you shouldn't plan. So, I think one of the first steps here is to actually make a plan. And it doesn't have to be super concrete. Don't be like, okay, this day I'm going to do this, and this day I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this every single hour, and then I'm going to learn this skill by this day. Don't do that. It's just going to stress you out, and it's just going to make things more chaotic, and it's just going to make you more angry when things don't happen exactly on your specific schedule and timeline. But do take the time to figure out what it is exactly that you want. Figure out what your goal is and find some time to journal on that. Journal out your plan and figure out what that end goal is and work backwards. That's one of my favorite things to do is to work backwards and shoot out a goal out there so you can break down the whole span of time between your starting point and your end point and break it down into digestible chunks that you could achieve over time to get to your end goal. And I think along with this, it's so important to figure out exactly what it is that you want. I think it's so great to just dive into things, but it also could get super chaotic if, you're just diving in and you don't know exactly what it is that you want to achieve. So make sure you take some time to journal on that. Once you find those things that you truly want and figure out what exactly it is that you're looking for, it makes it so much easier for you to have more of a streamlined path, to have more of an idea of where to go and the things to do to actually get there. You could just go out there and say, okay, my goal is to become a millionaire this year. Okay, you could say that, but then that's so unspecific. Like, how are you going to get there? How are you going to do that? So don't just shoot things out there just for fun that are just kind of crazy and random and totally vague. Remove the vagueness from it and get a little bit more specific and figure out what it is you want. So you want to become a millionaire, but is that through creating your own business? Is that from you, making a bunch of sales online? What are you doing? Are you just marrying a super rich man? Like, get specific. If that's your goal, sure, great. But like, you need to know what it is because there are so many different pathways you could go down and it could just get super confusing. So get a little bit more specific, figure out what your goals are, and then plan out some action steps. So let's say that you want to run a marathon within a year. You need to create some action steps to be able to get there. So this is when you could easily break it down. And I love once again using running because it could be broken down in terms of mileage and time, and it's super numerical and easy to talk through. So if you want to run a marathon in a year, then you need to figure out where you need to be by when. So by 6 months, realistically, you'd be at 13.1 miles specifically, which would be the half marathon. So start with that. Say, okay, I wanted to run a half marathon within 6 months, and then break that down. So within 3 months, I want to be able to run 6 miles. And just, you see how small that breaks it down? Obviously, running 26 miles at first sounded super scary, but now we broke down to 12, and now we're at 6. And then guess what? Within a month and a half, I need to run 3 miles. And then within 3 weeks, I need to start running a mile and a half. And you just see how much that breaks it down. It makes it so much more digestible. So it's no longer you just shooting things out there saying, hey, I'm going to go run a marathon. And then where do you start? Do you start by walking a lot? Do you start by just getting more steps in? Do you start by just like going out for a run one day and just hoping for the best? What are you doing? So break it down, find those action steps, and see how these can build to get you to your actual goal. And then the biggest step yet, get out there and start doing the things you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to be a content creator, start posting more. If you say you want to become a podcaster, start recording and start sharing your content. If you want to start a business, start putting your products together and start actually selling them. Build that e-commerce store. Stop waiting because people aren't going to come knocking at your door every day saying, hey, I want to buy your product when you didn't even put it out on the market yet. It's not going to happen. If you want to be that marathon runner, go to Dick's, buy a pair of running shoes, put them on, and start running that mile and a half by next week. Get your butt out there. And I will definitely call you guys out for this. A lot of times we say we're going to do things and take this action, and then we just wait so long and procrastinate to get started. So I'm calling you out right now. Start taking that action. Next up is to visualize. So I think it's really important to be able to visualize that end goal because you need some motivation to really dive in and get yourself to the end goal where you want to be. There's a lot of work and a lot of change and a lot of energy that goes into doing these things, and it's not easy. So to get some motivation to keep you moving, keep you motivated, you need to be able to visualize that end goal. Visualize what it would be like. Visualize your life if you were to actually build that story you wanted to build. Start your podcast, start becoming a content creator, maybe finding a way to make money online, becoming that runner. Picture the version of yourself that didn't wait. I think this is so important too. And this is something that I personally use all the time as my own motivation to keep me going and to keep me working towards that goal. Because a lot of times it can get super unmotivating. You think, maybe why am I putting this effort? Why am I still doing this? So I think visualization is the key to really unlocking that motivation and keeping it sustained over time. Visualize what your life would look like if you didn't wait, if you just launched yourself into it and kept going with it. Imagine it and feel it. Feel it in your gut, in your heart. Feel what it would be like to be at that end point when you actually did it. Use this and channel it into your day to day. There are definitely moments out there when I don't want to put in the effort to write podcast scripts when it's super late at night and I have so much else going on, or to build content to promote the podcast, to be posting all the time. There are times when I don't want to do it, but then I just visualize the version of myself that kept going, visualizing the version of myself that just kept working towards this and building this podcast and creating such a great community. And I channeled that feeling into my day to day to keep me motivated, to keep me moving, and to keep me learning every single day more and more in this space so I could grow and get better and get to that point that I want to be at. And importantly, you have to ask yourself, what if it works? As I mentioned, it's so easy to get unmotivated when you're working towards something and maybe you're not seeing super fast results right away, but it's really important to ask yourself, what if it works? What if the effort that you're putting in actually works to bring you to the end goal that you want to get to? Ask yourself this and switch your mindset instead of being fearful of maybe what if it doesn't work? Maybe, you put in all this effort and it's for nothing. You need to get yourself out of that fearful mindset and into that hopeful mindset. Honestly, I love to talk about the Lulu girl mindset. Like, get yourself into that mindset that's already yours. It's already happening. What if it works? Ask yourself this and pay attention to how you feel when you're working through this idea in your head. You know, what if it works? And see how that feels inside of you. Do you light up inside when you think about that? Do you feel so inspired, so motivated when you think about it working out? Because if so, you need to channel that. That's just a sign that you are so passionate about it and you can do it. You already have the energy in you. Your body's already telling you you have the energy, you have the passion to chase after and keep working towards it. So ask yourself, what if it works out? What if? And keep rolling with it. All right, and finally, guys, I have some action steps for you to take away from today's episode so you can start really working in and start diving in to take action on your goals, your aspirations, to really start putting in the work to make them your reality. So, first thing is to call yourself out. And don't be brutal on yourself, but don't be afraid to give yourself a little kick in the butt. Call yourself out. What is it that you've been wanting to do that you haven't been doing? How long have you been wanting to do this and you haven't been doing it for? Has it been days, weeks, months, years? What is it? How long have you been waiting to do it? And why haven't you started doing it yet? Ask yourself this too, because I think this could actually reveal a lot of things in us and a lot of those limiting fears and limiting beliefs that we have right off the bat. Figure out what's been holding you back from diving in, from going all in, from taking the action. Figure this out. So now you have a way to eliminate those blockages right off the bat so you can dive in and have a free and open road towards working towards your goals. After you go ahead and do that, I want you to figure out what it is this week, not next week, not next month, but this week to move you one step closer to that dream of yours. So you already called yourself out for what you weren't doing, but now it's time to find an action step that you could take right away to push yourself into that momentum to just get you started. It doesn't have to be huge. Maybe if you want to change your career, you're not just quitting your job on a whim, but maybe you're actually going to start diving in and applying to another few jobs. So you're getting the momentum going and showing the universe that you're ready to make that change. Maybe you want to move to a new city. So you're not just packing up your U-Haul just yet, but maybe you're opening Zillow to look up apartments somewhere else. You want to start dating and start trying to work towards finding a relationship again. Well, maybe you're going to put yourself out there in an extra way this week. Maybe it's not even getting on a dating app. Dating apps are scary. That's actually like side note. That's kind of like a big step there. So maybe we're not even getting on the dating apps this week. Maybe we're just putting ourselves out there in a different way. Maybe that's just going up to somebody at a coffee shop or just going out and about more. You're not going to meet somebody if you're just sitting in your room all day. So maybe you're just putting yourself out there to go, play pickleball with some friends out on the courts, or putting yourself in those situations where it'd be easier to meet somebody. So figure out one step that you could do this week to launch that progress and launch yourself into starting what you want to work towards, and actually take action on this. Please. Don't just write it down and don't do it. Don't just scroll it off in some corner of some notebook and forget about it. Actually do it and stick with it. And I promise you, this is just the beginning, and there's going to be so much growth to come after this first step. Take some time to journal too. Ask yourself once again what you're waiting for, and what if you just started now? Take some time to journal on this topic and really dive into, your limiting beliefs, the past fears that you have, and just take some time to journal on this 5, 10 minutes. Do some free writing. That's one of my favorite things to do. It doesn't have to be super structured, but just take some moments to write on this, figure out why you want to work towards something so badly, and take a few minutes to write on this so you have it to come back to as well. If you're in those periods of feeling unmotivated or uninspired down the road when you're still working towards this goal, you'll then have this journal prompt to open up to realize why you started to begin with. And finally, your last action step to dive in and finally take action towards making those goals a reality is to share your goals. Share them with your neighbor, your friend, your family, your classmates, your coworkers, and most importantly, share it with me on the show here as well. I would love to hear what goals that you're working on and what you're working towards, what you're inspired to create for yourself. So make sure to share it with me either here if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, drop it in the comments, or feel free to share it with me on Instagram as well. My Instagram handle is the Diaries on Instagram, and just the Dream Life Diaries on TikTok. So go shoot me a message there, because I would absolutely love to hear from you guys and hear everything that you're working towards. Just remember, you don't have to have it all figured out before you start. And sometimes the messy beginnings lead to the most growth and the best outcomes. So if you're looking to dive into something, and if you've been waiting to take action on a big goal, a big aspiration of yours, this is your sign to dive into it. Dive in head first, both feet in, and start chasing what you want and just get started. And I promise you, once you get started, the momentum is going to keep pushing you forward, and there's going to be so much progress to come. No matter if you're ready or not, that dream is waiting for you, and you just need to finally take action to stop waiting and go out there and grab it for yourself, because the universe is not going to put it at your doorstep. The world is not going to slow down and wait for you. So take advantage of your time. Take advantage of your time now and go out there and grab it and make it yours. Guys, I am so beyond grateful for every single one of you. I'm so grateful for any new people who are following along the show, following along my socials, listening here. I am so blessed to have each and every one of you listening in every week. So, huge shout out to everybody who's been coming back to listen every week. But for everybody who's new here, I am so grateful for you clicking on this episode and starting to listen as well. So, whether you're new here or a returning listener, make sure to share this episode with somebody who might need to hear it as well. And leave a comment below with any of your takeaways from the show, and let me know what you'd like to hear next. Besides that, I think that's all for today. But you guys go have the most amazing week. Take action, and I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Bye.